Hello, everyone. Thank you everyone for being here. My name's Leah Rappa. I use she, her pronouns. I'm with the DPS Substance Use Prevention Program. And oh, my camera's working. So if you can't see me, I'm sorry. But so we host our DPS substance use webinars every month on the third Wednesday at noon. And I'm so excited for our presentation today. Today we are going to talk about supporting students and youth who are impacted by trauma, and we have an amazing expert here. But before I get started, I want to let our Spanish interpreter give quick instructions on how to access interpretation.
Buenas tardes a todos. Esta es Hilda, la intérprete de este seminario. Vamos a ofrecer interpretación simultánea. Dentro de unos segundos, una vez que yo sea asignada como intérprete, ustedes van a ver en la parte inferior de su pantalla de computadora un globo terrestre, el icono de un globo terrestre. Si pueden hacer un clic ahí y elegir español como idioma preferido. Y si están en su teléfono, son 3 puntitos que deberían aparecer en la parte superior derecha de la pantalla. Hacer un clic ahí, elegir interpretación y elegir español como su idioma de preferencia. Muchísimas gracias. Y si me pudieran mandar, por favor, un texto diciendo que tengo audiencia en español para continuar interpretando. Gracias. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. And as I mentioned, we have an amazing presenter today, really an expert on everything that we are looking for. And so I'm really excited to introduce to you all Dina Zainy. Dina has been an educator at DPS for over 25 years. She started as a language arts teacher. She taught reading and writing, mainly at the middle school level. And after teaching language arts for many years, she wanted to work with students in a different capacity. So after getting her master's in school counsel, so she left, got her master's in school counseling, and now she works as a trauma-informed practice specialist. Dina, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much, Leah. Unfortunately, it's telling me that my video is unavailable to turn on because the host has turned it off. So, or because the host has stopped it. So if I apologize that you cannot see my face, but thank you so much for being here.
And Dina, you should be able to. Sorry, that was my fault. Go ahead and try one more time.
Okay, let's see that. Oh, there we go. Okay, thank you so much. Wonderful. Well, hello and welcome everyone to today's session. Thank you for, please go ahead if you haven't done so, put in the chat how you are feeling today. And you can put a word or a color. I am definitely in the yellow zone today, maybe yellow and green, because you can feel more than one thing at once. I'm feeling affection and love and joy right now and excitement. So all of those. And Leah, if you can read for me, if anyone is dropping anything in the chat, that would be great.
Yes, and I just opened the chat. So if anybody was unable to do it, you should be able to put your feeling in the chat. I see content. Thank you.
Nice. Wonderful. Now, there are no wrong or right feelings, and you can feel more than one emotion at once. And so thank you so much for engaging and for putting this in the chat. And if we have any more folks who are dropping in the chat what they are feeling, that would be great if you could share that. But understanding and accepting emotions is the first step in learning how to regulate them. Feelings wheel are a great tool to check in with your children and with each other and with yourselves as well. It gives everyone an opportunity to feel seen, heard, and valued. And it teaches students new words to identify how they're feeling. And actually, research says that sharing and expressing feelings calms the amygdala. And we'll talk about that. The amygdala is a part in the downstairs brain. We'll talk about that in a few slides. But it's the alarm system in our brain, and it allows us to cope with those emotions. And so checking in also provides positive, strong, and focused start to the day. And it keeps that predictability component with rituals and routines. If you create that ritual and routine throughout the day with your children, it also creates physical and psychological safety. And there are many, many wheels out there and many feeling thermometers out there that you can actually download off the internet. It really depends on what works best for you and your family. And they have them in several different languages as well. And so I love quotes, and I'm going to start us off with this quote by Heather Forbes. Becoming trauma-informed is moving from a fear-based platform to a love-based platform. It's about moving the pendulum from the edge of fear, power, and control to the higher order of love, relationships, and regulation. And again, Heather Forbes said this, and she's the author of Classroom 180 and Help for Billy, in addition to other books. And we use those books as trauma-informed guides in our schools. And in essence, what it's saying is becoming trauma-informed is not merely adopting a set of techniques or protocols. It's a shift towards creating environments that are characterized by love, empathy, and understanding. And it's a shift that holds the potential to profoundly impact individuals, communities, and systems, and fostering healing and resilience in the face of adversity. And I always say, like the old adage goes, you definitely you get more from honey than you do vinegar. And so I definitely want to work from a love-based platform. So this is our agenda for today. I'll be going over our learning objectives, DPS's 6 pillars of trauma-informed practices, and the CASTLE framework. We'll talk about events, experiences, and the effects of trauma on the brain, the nervous system, behavior, and learning. And we'll go over some strategies for parents to use at home. And then we will have an intentional closing. So our learning objectives for today are to expand knowledge about trauma's impact on the brain, the nervous system, behavior, and learning. We'll explore strategies to help build supportive relationships with your children. And then we will learn how to apply the regulate, relate, reason approach during challenging moments, because we all know we have those. So these here are DPS's 6 pillars of trauma-informed practices. Just as we apply these principles within our schools, they are also applicable within the home. And so with the systems-wide trauma-informed competence, just like we want our educators to know about trauma and how it impacts the brain, behavior, and learning, we also want our parents to know the same, because knowledge is power. Safe and welcoming environments are essential for anyone to live, work, learn, and play. And children would not be able to learn or play if their environments were not safe. And another essential element to have at school and home is healing, honest, and trusting relationships. Those are so essential. Humans need each other because we are social animals that thrive off of each other. And so no matter how difficult things or situations may get, having each other and being able to count on one another is essential to especially our children who need us and will lean on us during difficult times. We also want to tend to our cultural differences because we all have different backgrounds and upbringings. DPS is a very diverse district, and it has students from all walks of life. And we definitely want to appreciate our cultures in schools, as well as center our cultures within our homes. We also want to elevate our students' voices and choices and teach them about making good decisions and how to stand up for themselves, just as we want to do this within the home. And of course, no one can do this work without taking care of themselves as well, because you cannot pour from an empty cup. You have to take care of yourselves. And I like the saying, as flight attendants say, put your own mask on first before assisting others, because otherwise you will not be able to take care of others. Our session outcomes align with these CASEL competencies. CASEL stands for Collaborative for Academic, Social, and Emotional Learning. And the competencies include self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationship skills, and responsible decision-making. Social and emotional learning is a precursor to academic learning. We have to know how to do that first. And everything that we do in life, such as study, work, or play, needs social and emotional learning. We need emotional intelligence. All of these competencies are necessary to build good, healthy connections with others. Self-awareness is one of the first competencies that leads into the others. And that is why teaching children about feelings and emotions is so important. And that's where the feelings wheel comes into play. And there are many ways to check in with your child. Self-awareness also lends itself to self-management, because when we know how we feel, then we can then manage our emotions so that we can feel better. We need all of these competencies to be able to engage with other people and to thrive in life. And so with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and start the content. What is trauma? Well, individual trauma results from an event, a series of events, or a set of circumstances that is experienced by an individual as physically or emotionally harmful or life-threatening, and that has lasting adverse effects on the individual's functioning and mental, physical, social, emotional, or spiritual well-being. And this definition was put out by the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration. And in this session, we will focus on the 3 E's to understand what trauma entails. So we'll focus on events, experiences, and effects. So this image here was put out by ACEs Connection. They're called PACEs now. ACEs stands for Adverse Childhood Experiences, and PACEs stands for Positive and Adverse Childhood Experiences. Well, this image shows how trauma shows up in 3 different realms. The household level, as you see with the tree and the leaves on the tree, which is where physical, emotional, and sexual abuse and neglect occur, in addition to things like divorce and homelessness. Trauma also occurs at the community level, where we see historical and racial trauma. We see poverty and food scarcity and a lack of jobs and good housing. And it also occurs at the environmental level, which is where we see effects of war, migration, the climate crisis. And this is where the pandemic lives. So everyone now has seen at least one ACE if they were born after 2020, because the pandemic and COVID is now a collective trauma. And we all know that COVID was not equal to everyone. Some people had it a lot harder than others. And so ACEs are common across all populations. 1 in 4 students have experienced trauma, have experienced at least one ACE. And 1 in 6 students have experienced 4 or more ACEs. And some populations are more vulnerable to experiencing ACEs because of the social and economic conditions in which they live, learn, work, and play. Um, and study findings show a correlation between ACEs and negative health and well-being outcomes. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in just a couple of slides. But in other words, as the number of ACEs increase, so do the risks for negative outcomes. Now, ACEs are also associated with early mortality, up to 20 years difference in life expectancy. And this is why trauma-informed practices are so important, because we can be a part of changing that trajectory. If a child has at least one trusting adult in their life, then this can help them not only survive and get past all of these adversities that we see here, but also thrive in life. So I want to paint a picture for you guys so that you have some context as to the type of humans that are affected by adversities that we're talking about here. So let's take a look at these two characters to understand a little bit more their experiences with these events. I want to introduce you to Andy and Billy, and Andy and Billy can be any age, any race, or any gender. And this is just a generalization. We're going to take a look at both ends of the spectrum. So Andy comes from a typical household with either 1 or 2 loving and supportive parents. Andy lives in a home filled with predictability and consistency because they know that their parent or parents are coming home and that they will eat dinner together. And they're certain that their caregiver will ask them how they are doing that day and about their favorite part of the day and the good things that they made happen. So Andy has rituals and routines that they look forward to in their home. There is a sense of togetherness and knowing and of what's to come. However, on the other end of the spectrum, we have Billy, who comes from a home with many adversities, including not having supportive caregivers. Billy lives in a home filled with unpredictability because they don't know if their parent or parents are going to be home. There's a lot of inconsistency and uncertainty in Billy's life. Billy is unsure if they are going to even eat that night, or if anyone is going to fight with them that night, or they may be fighting in front of them. They are unsure of what is going to happen next, and there is a sense of loss. Billy, by the way, has a very high ACE score. And so let's take a look at the experiences. Everyone's experiences of a traumatic event is going to be different. However, we are going to generalize the experience for all of our students and think about how a child might be viewing the world. So this is how we assume or hope that our kids view the world. This is how Andy sees the world. There are positive sensory experiences. They may be smelling the flowers or whistling to a tune. The world is bright and happy. Children see adults as safe, and that's a perception of the world that they have. But trauma has a way of impacting our view of the world and of ourselves and of others. So let's take a look at how those that have been impacted by trauma may view the world. So a student that has been experiencing trauma and stress could see that same scene very differently. There have been shifts in the way the student views themselves and the way they view others and the whole world. And this can actually be an appropriate reaction. This can, their brains have adapted in a way to protect themselves from a scary world. And so instead of trust, you now have distrust. Now you have hypervigilance and a survival orientation. And so reactions to our experiences are adaptive and help us survive in the future. They are there to help us. Here we see the effects of trauma. The impact of childhood trauma and high levels of stress can lead to a whole range of negative effects in various domains, such as, for example, a smaller brain size in terms of brain development, difficulty problem solving and language delays in terms of cognition, sleep and eating disorders in terms of physical health, difficulty recognizing and controlling emotions, which is why we need to teach them how to handle and how to recognize their emotions. Difficulty forming relationships and attachment disorders because they did not trust the people that they were with. Poor self-regulation and aggression in terms of behavior, and we see this in schools, and anxiety and depression in terms of mental health, just to name a few. Now, ACEs are common and can add up over time. And if left untreated or with no intervention, there is a 20-year life difference in life expectancy, excuse me. And so exposure to ACEs is associated with increased risk for health problems across the lifespan, increased for healthy risk unhealthy risky behaviors, also socioeconomic challenges such as unemployment and no health insurance. So let's talk about the brain and how trauma impacts the brain. The brain stem is the first part of the brain to develop, and it activates the fight, flight, freeze response. It also tells the body to send out a bunch of adrenaline and cortisol to basically help us survive. The brainstem reacts very quickly. It does not think, and its main job is to keep a human alive. It also takes care of automatic functions such as breathing and temperature and blinking and heart rate and stuff like that, things that we do not need to think about. Now, the next part of the brain to develop, and again, the brain develops from the bottom up and the inside out. The next part of the brain to develop, as you see in the blue there, is the limbic system. And the limbic system is in charge of taking care of big feelings and emotions like anger and fear. And this is where the amygdala that I mentioned earlier, that is where the amygdala sits. And the amygdala is the sounding alarm system. It sounds the alarm when a human feels like they are threatened. So the blue part and the red part we call the downstairs brain. And in the limbic system also is the hippocampus. And the hippocampus in people that have experienced a lot of trauma is smaller. So Billy's hippocampus is going to be smaller than Andy's. And one of the jobs that the hippocampus does is it moves short-term to long-term memory. And in folks that have experienced a lot of trauma, especially our children, they are the ones that really have a hard time remembering directions or have a hard time remembering what was just told to them. And so that's why rituals and routines and doing things over and over again is so important, because it doesn't take up a memory slot. It's already internalized. It's something that they internalize inside of them and they know how to do well. And it also holds neutral and positive memories. And again, with our kiddos that have experienced a lot of trauma, they really don't have the capacity to remember a whole lot of good things. because their hippocampus is smaller. And so that's why talking about their strengths and what they did good that day and all those happy memories and bringing them up to the surface and talking about them as a family is so important. And then we have the green part up here, that's the prefrontal cortex. And that is where we do the logic and the reasoning and the focus and attention and also regulating our emotions. That's where we want, that's where teachers want their students to be. And that's where we as parents want our children to be, because that's where we do all the good things. Now, this part of the brain does not fully develop until the age of 25 or even older. And so we have to remember of all of this that we cannot be in our learning brain or our survival brain at the same time. And so let me rephrase that. We can't be upstairs and downstairs at the same time. We're going to say that prefrontal cortex is upstairs. It's either we're going to be upstairs in learning mode or we're going to be downstairs in survival mode. And our Billies and those that have experienced a lot of trauma, more often than not, are going to be sitting in their downstairs brain because they are mostly worried about survival. Now, here's another image that we can use to compare the differences between the brain sizes and the function of the brain. We see these differences in PET scans and other brain scans. This graphic here illustrates the development of a typical child, and so Andy's brain, as compared to the development of a child experiencing trauma, so Billy's brain. And so as indicated, the typical child focuses the most energy on cognition and social and emotional functions and very little on survival because they did not need to do that. They already had their basic needs met. However, on the other side, on the right side, the triangle inverts for the child experiencing trauma, with most of the brain's attention centered on survival, leaving very little for cognition and social and emotional functions. So we are able to help our children, we rewire their brains. Unfortunately, our Billies think very negatively about themselves. They think that they may feel stupid or not lovable or not good enough or not smart enough. And our beliefs are at the core of who we are. Our beliefs are our reality and they influence our physiology. And so when we're feeling good, we feel good in our bodies. But when we're not thinking well, we don't feel well in our bodies. Our Billies have stomach aches and headaches more often than our Andys, and they tend to go to the nurse's office more. And so it's important to know that an important influence over a child's level of academic success is his or her belief system. Now, these are simple ways that we can rewire Billy's brain. And by the way, all of these best practices are good for everyone, not just for our Billies. And so practicing saying positive affirmations and giving gratitude can have several psychological, emotional, and even physical benefits. These are self-empowering statements aimed at fostering a positive mental attitude. They improve self-esteem. They promote a growth mindset, and positive affirmations and practicing gratitude can help individuals overcome their self-doubt and negative self-talk by reinforcing their worth and their capabilities and potential. And in this slide, I do have, and these slides will be shared with you, but in this slide, I do have a resource as to what self-affirmations look and sound like, as well as a resource for expressing gratitude. And that is with the random acts of kindness. And you can access those after this session today. And so this here is our window of tolerance, which is run by our nervous system. And we all have a window of tolerance. Some of our windows are wider than others. It just really depends on how many coping skills we have to keep us within the window. And the window is the green part there is really where we can engage with each other's, where we can think clearly, where we can be with others and learn and thrive. However, our billies do tend to exit this window more often than not. So they go into hyper arousal with behaviors such as screaming and kicking and fighting, or they may go into hypoarousal, which is when a person is feeling numb and dissociated, and they just cannot engage with others. And so dysregulated nervous system will send us out of our window of tolerance, especially when we don't have those coping mechanisms. Now, some of the quickest ways to keep our children and ourselves in our windows so that we can operate from a good space is breathing. Breathing is one of the best ways to teach our children how to breathe, is one of the best ways to keep them in their window of tolerance, or to keep or to bring them back into the window if they've exited. Eating food and exercising are, and eating food and drinking water and exercising are the other two ways. And so I'm a huge advocate of teaching our children how to breathe, because that is so beneficial. We all need to learn how to breathe in order to take care of ourselves and bring ourselves back to our window of tolerance. Now, when we exit our window of tolerance, especially our abilities, we can see these behaviors. So at the top of the chart, there are behaviors which we see children exhibiting when they are in fight, flees, or fawn. And so when a person is in fight mode, we see yelling and blaming and hitting. However, Heather Forbes says that negative behavior is a regulatory issue. It's not a behavior issue. And if we put on the trauma-informed lens after we know how trauma affects the human being, we can understand that what's going on underneath the behavior that they are exhibiting. And so when looking at the behavior underneath, we will understand that they may be feeling fear, alarm, or anxiety. The next one over, when we see a person in flight mode, we see them fidgeting or avoiding or running away, but underneath, they're feeling buzzing and restlessness. And again, when we see a person in freeze mode, we may see them avoiding or in isolation or not completing their work. However, when we put our lens on, underneath, they may be feeling numb or terrified or desperate. And then lastly, and this is where I used to end up as a kid, they may be feeling numb, or excuse me, they are in fawn or appeasing. And what we may be seeing is putting others' emotions first, or they're overly agreeable or apologetic, but underneath they are feeling anxiety and uncertainty, and sometimes the inability to say no. So we need to put that trauma-informed lens on. And these are some things that will escalate our students. So like, for example, talking negatively about them while they're present, reminding them of their lost privileges when de-escalating, sometimes loud, harsh, or frightening tone of voice or posture, or grabbing or touching them. Sarcasm or mimicking or public shaming will send our children, especially the billies, outside of their window of tolerance. And also even our Andes. But then there are signals that will calm our students. And so the best one is a well-regulated, calm adult. We have to model for our students how to stay calm, how to take big, deep breaths, and how to handle difficult situations. And so humor or using the relationship in the moment, giving time and space calms them, clear expectations, and co-regulating with them when dysregulation happen is also calming. Now, we are going to go into the 4 core priorities of trauma-informed practices that will help you as parents and your children stay within your windows of tolerance so that you can also thrive in your environments. First is predictability. Trauma unpredictably violates our physical, social, and emotional safety, resulting in a sense of threat. So we want to keep things predictable for our children because trauma takes away one's sense of safety in the world. Routines are very helpful. Routines help children feel safe and develop life skills and build healthy habits. And they also help parents feel organized. And so some things that we can do is like create routines, for example, morning and afternoon check-ins, ask them about their roses and thorns, like the good things and the bad things that happen to them. You can create fun schedules together. You can review the schedules the night before and talk about them and change them if they need to be changed. And so let your kids know what's coming next. Respond in predictable ways and give them a set time for when to do homework and for when to do their chores and when you're going to eat together and all of those wonderful things. And so please go ahead and put in the chat, what are some ways that you can create predictability in your home? And again, if you can read those, if anyone.
All right, I see post a schedule.
Nice.
We keep a week-long poster of family events that lists major events and routine events. Eating regular dinners, making sure I follow through with promises, focus on building positive emotions and building mastery in areas they are struggling, setting up a morning and nighttime routine. These are amazing. Thank you,
That's
everyone.
awesome. Thank you so much for sharing what you're doing because we can all learn from each other as well. Thank you. All right. The next one is flexibility. Trauma can cause a child to feel rigid and constricted, and inflexible parenting methods can trigger some of our students into survival mode. And so as parents and caregivers and guardians, we do want to try to be flexible with your thinking and your actions. Flexibility and choice can support in regaining personal locus of control. So ask yourselves, what is really important in the home right now? And if you were children, would you be able to follow the rules? And who is going to suffer if there is no flexibility? So some strategies to follow are to notice your child's needs and make decisions about the current moment instead of how you may have always done it. Things change all the time. So try to be flexible with your kids' schedules and your own schedules as well. Try to give at least 2 choices instead of just one, and involve your children in the decision making when possible. And if they offer a suggestion and it works, then take them up on it. And if a routine is not working, by the way, don't be afraid to change it. And so please put in the chat, how do you incorporate flexibility into your children's daily lives?
Haley put modeling.
Love it. Okay. My mom would ask us, do you want to go here or there? She would give us an option. Or do you want to eat this or that? If that was available to us. So
Had someone else put in the chat, but they need to work on this piece.
yeah, that's awareness. So that's good that you are aware of that. Wonderful. Thank you so much for engaging. Oh, do we have another one?
Yes, occasionally diverting from an activity schedule, maybe instead taking time to relax instead. And then giving my niece options for activity or relaxation, and allowing more time for games and internet if responsibilities are complete and on time, or using a convince me model.
Love it. Thank you. All right, moving on. So parents are sources of strength for their children, and the single most important factor for your child to develop resistance and resilience, rather, is at least one stable and committed relationship with a supportive parent, caregiver, or another adult. And it's our biological need for all humans to feel connected and a sense of belonging. And connection is really about building relationships. And you are the most important role model that your kids have. So, these strategies that you see are great to build relationships and strengthen those connections with your children. And so create rituals and routines, eat meals together, talk about the roses and thorns, take an evening walk together, ask them what they would like to do and do it together, ask fun questions, allow yourselves to be silly. And so my next question to you all is, or if you could please put in the chat box a fun moment that you have had connecting with your kids. We love learning from each other.
Someone put skipping to the car at school pickup.
Mm.
Singing in the car and making up songs and singing.
Love it. Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing what you do as a family. Love it. Yeah, we do picnics all the time. All right. I'm going to move on to our final priority that we can instill in our homes. So trauma involves a loss of power and control that can make one feel helpless, hopeless, and powerless. And you can empower your children by giving them choices and letting their voices be heard. Empowering your children with choices and allowing their voices and their opinions to be heard helps them feel valued at home and within the community. And so ask yourselves, how can adults and children share the power within the home? How can you help your child feel that they are valued member of the family? What kinds of decisions can you allow your child to make? And so here are some strategies that you can be implemented at home. Allow your child to voice their opinion and listen to them without judgment. Allow your child to have options to choose from instead of just one option. Ask your child what they would like to do to make a positive difference in the home, school, or community, and let them take action. Give them choices and let their voices be heard, and allow them to make those choices based on their needs, because all of our needs are different. You can give guidelines and also suggestions, of course, you being the adult. Give them opportunities to create their own schedules as well. So share the power and collaborate with the decision making so that you're all making those decisions and you're teaching them how to make those decisions. And so, how do you empower your child with choices and opportunities to voice their opinion and their wants and their needs? And if there was something that was put in from the last question, then please feel free to read that as well, Leah.
Yes, sorry, I missed that and I love it. I like to do popsicles and poopsicles, similar to roses and thorns. We prioritize positive thoughts and work on difficult situations.
Love it.
And then Haley put helping kids see their voices are important, taking time to listen. I usually ask my niece to help me cook or reorganize room layouts. Choosing one family dinner meal per week.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing what you do in your homes. We really appreciate it. I love learning from other people, and I love that popsicle poopsicle stuff. Oh man, that's going in my next training. All right. So, we all have conflict. We all have challenging moments with the people that we love the most. That is inevitable. If we're human, then this is going to happen. So when conflict or challenging moments between you and your child does occur, you can use the regulate, relate, reason strategy by Dr. Bruce Perry to help you get through the situation with as much grace as possible. And so when a child or young person becomes dysregulated, we first want to help them regulate their emotions and their bodies. We want to give them time and space and let them know that they are safe. We want to give them options as to what they would like to do to regulate themselves. I personally like to breathe, and I like to take a walk around the block and be with the nature. There are so many different ways to help regulate oneself, and what works for one person isn't necessarily going to work for another. So we really need to teach our children how they can cope with their dysregulated nervous system and how to get them back to a regulated state. After we help them regulate, we want to then relate to them as human beings by connecting to their pain and their emotions. And so with that, we want to give attuned responses like, I hear you, I see you, I understand, no, it's not fair, I totally get it. And so we want to make it us versus the problem. Like, we will get through this together. We don't want to punish or reason with them. We will reason with them later when they are capable, because remember, they can only be in their downstairs brain or their upstairs brain. And I'm sure you can all remember a time when you were dysregulated and you were upset about something and you were sitting in your downstairs brain. You were not able to talk. You were not able to think clearly. And it's really important to know that that's what happens to all human beings. So think about a time when you were in the situation and then put yourselves in your children's shoes. Now, once we are regulated and once we're back upstairs and we're able to think, then we can reason with our children. Then we can problem solve together. I usually tell teachers that by this time, students are are already owning up to their mistakes, and they're already saying, I'm sorry, and I could do this better, or whatever the case may be. And this is when we want to solve the problem together and learn and repair and really learn those skills at that time. So we need to teach those skills explicitly. Now, these are ways that we can help our children regulate their emotions. We could take a deep breath, and so we model that for the youth. We offer them coping strategies to choose from, and we really need to talk about those strategies before the conflict. So teach them social and emotional learning now before we get to those hard times, and co-regulate with them, meaning breathe with them if that's possible, walk with them, do jumping jacks with them, so that they know that you are there with them to help them get through this difficult time. You also want to show open, accepting body language versus threatening body posture, like my dad used to do. We want to slow down to reduce stress and allow silence to give them time to process. And we never want to engage in a power struggle. We want to let things just be calm and let things be until both parties are able to talk about things. And ways to relate to a student, we want to focus on your child's feelings. So we want to name it to tame it. How are you feeling? Once they name that, then it automatically calms the amygdala. We want to listen to their perspective and accept their distress and tolerate their attitude and language for that time. And we want to connect to their pain and show them concern, and also validate their struggle. And so, and then finally, also giving them an attuned response, which will really help them regulate their nervous system, because it speaks to their emotions. And so things that you can say are, I hear you. No, that's not fair. You have every right to be upset. And if once you get this deck, if you click on the attuned responses, there are many others there as resources for you. And I highly suggest that you pick one or two that resonates with you and try using that. And of course, you can always change them if they don't work. And once both parties are regulated, then we can reason with the child or youth and problem solve together. This is when we can reinforce the family culture and talk about what's most important to you. We can repair and problem solve together and rebuild the relationship and reintegrate back into the family. And always remember that rules without relationships equal rebellion. So with that, I would like to read another one of my favorite quotes by Michelle Obama. She says it very well for us parents. With every word we utter, with every action we take, we know our kids are watching us. We as parents are the most important role models. However, in order to take care of others, we must first take care of ourselves. We cannot forget about ourselves, because our children are watching us and they will model after us. And so I hope that this session today was beneficial to you. What are one or two things that you can try today? Maybe what is an aha moment or an appreciation or action step that you can take away from this session today? If you'd like to drop that in the chat, please feel free to do so. If you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat and we will do our best in answering them. And I thank you all very much for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Dina. That was amazing.
Thank
As everybody is putting that in these intentional closures in the chat, I also want to bring everyone's attention to the Q&A piece. If you have any questions for Dina, please feel free to go ahead and put them in the Q&A or also put them in chat. And in the chat, we have providing more age-appropriate choices. And so we have a question. What is your go-to tool for self-regulation for a kid that struggles with breathing, if breathing actually makes them feel very anxious?
Yes, so exercise, any form of exercise is great just to get the adrenaline and cortisol out of their bodies, because that is those are two chemicals that make us very anxious. And fidgets are really good. Any form of exercise such as running, doing push-ups, doing jumping jacks. I would really suggest all of these to the child and allow them to pick their favorite, and see what works best for them.
Thank you, Dina. We have another question. What is the best way to impose consequences or even support such as tutoring without exasperating the child's feeling of I'm not good enough or I'm not smart enough?
So being straightforward, being logical, yet compassionate and kind at the same time, and allowing them to know that you come from a good space and place, and that you are looking out for their well-being, and also maybe problem solving together. I would also defer to you, Leah and Haley, if you have anything that you can offer this very important question as to how you would handle these situations.
Let's see. Let me see if I can bring Haley off mute really quickly. Okay, yes, she's right behind me and she doesn't have anything to add. However, we'll definitely think on it. And if we have anything, I will send out a follow-up email.
Absolutely. That sounds wonderful. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. And then we have one last question. How can I help bring out a teen who is withdrawn to zero, who resists togetherness, shuns support, and will only give nonverbal or one-word responses to any questions?
That is another very good question. I would think that being in touch with their feelings and their emotions, asking them how they are feeling and why they are feeling this way, and coming up with a list of their likes and what interests them most, and pulling in other people as well, people that they connect with, that they appreciate being around, and asking them for their thoughts and advice. Ask your child what is most important to them and what can they do to help elevate their wants and needs so that they are met. Now, I do suggest a very good book out there by Dr. Dan Siegel. The brain. Oh my gosh, it's leaving me right now. I can't think of the name, but I will put that resource in our last deck, in our last slide in the slide deck, so that you can check that book out. It's a wonderful book on how everything that you just asked me right now. I'm racking my brain to think back to what Dr. Dan Siegel said. And so I am going to put that resource in the slide deck for you all.
Thank you, Dina. And we do have two more intentional closures in the chat answers. So somebody put reinforcement of self-worth and capabilities, which I love. And also, I think someone wrote this in the chat earlier, but I appreciate the suggestion of moving time for activities to time for relaxation.
Wonderful. Love it. Thank you. Thank you all so much for engaging and for sharing your wonderful ideas with us. And I wish you all a wonderful day and a wonderful time with your children. And thank you.
Thank you, Dina, and thank you everyone for being here. We will send out Dina's slides as well as a recording of this amazing webinar in the next couple days. And look forward to hopefully seeing you at another webinar in the next couple months. So thank you so much.
Thank you.